morning to members of the media. My name is Hayden Romano. I'm the Managing Director of the Environmental Management Authority. And firstly, I would like to introduce Francesco Gitani of UN Environment, Sharifa Abdullah of UNDP, and Keisha Garcia, who is the co-chair of the GO6 Latin America and the Caribbean report. We're here this morning and we're very happy that UN Environment, the government of Brazil, our own Ministry of Planning and Development, and the Environmental Management Authority is hosting a workshop on indicators for the wider Caribbean region. We do have delegates from Belize, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Haiti, Suriname, St. Lucia, Barbados, Jamaica, and we're very happy to welcome them here this morning to Trinidad and Tobago. This meeting is very important for the Caribbean as we move towards achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Francesco will give us a bit more details with respect to what the meeting will entail. Francesco.
Sure. Yes. Sure. Thank you, Mr. Romano, and thank you to the government of Trinidad and Tobago for supporting UN Environment in this effort to organize this regional meeting. Actually, this is the second meeting or the second workshop we are organizing in the Latin America and the Caribbean region. We do recognize the specificity and the importance to have a specific Caribbean workshops focusing on the real needs of the Caribbean. And for this reason, we are today and for the next 3 days gathering here in Porto, Spain, experts from the Ministry of Environment from Caribbean states, but also representatives of the national statistical offices, with a very simple and very straightforward objective and goal, which is selecting a set of indicators which are able to represent those themes, those environmental issues that are of critical importance for the region. Today we will have Keisha Garcia introducing the workshop with a presentation on the Global Environment Outlook, Latin America and the Caribbean, which is a report on the state of the environment that we published and presented 1 year ago. The results from this report are also important to us, are important inputs for the orientation, for the selection of these indicators. During the next 2 days, we will have a technical workshop, a technical discussion with experts and delegates from member countries of the Caribbean, and ideally, in principle, we will be able to have by Wednesday in the evening a list of indicators and the related metadata, which are the methodologies and data sources that are needed to inform those indicators.
Thank you very much, Francesco. Sharifa Abdullah is with the UNDP and she is the assistant resident representative. Sharifa is going to tell us a little bit about the mainstreaming adaptation policy support, which is the MAPS program that the UNDP is responsible for, and which is so aligned to Vision 2030, which is the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago's policy.
Thank you very much and good morning to all. So as I indicated earlier, there is a very close alignment between the UNDP's MAPS mission report, which is mainstreaming acceleration policy support, a tool that the UNDP has developed to really look at the state of the SDGs and attainment of SDGs. Trinidad and Tobago conducted a MAPS mission here in April this year, and from that report identified 5 accelerators. What was very encouraging was that those 5 accelerators were closely aligned to government's Vision 2030 5 pillars. There are 2 key accelerators that relate to the environment, and those accelerators have identified a number of initiatives that the Ministry of Planning is considering, and we hope that the Minister of Finance would also consider in his budget presentation to really look at advancing the environmental concerns, the environmental agenda of the country. I want to also commend the organizers for really championing informed decision making, and as my colleague from UN Environment indicated, the importance of really agreeing on a set of indicators is critical for the region. And it couldn't be more timely given what we've experienced over the last few weeks with the devastating hurricanes. I think it's very important that we establish some baseline measures, indicators, statistics, whatever we want to call them, and to be able to agree on these indicators, to tailor them to our particular circumstances in this region, and then to get on with the business of measurement and measuring our progress. The whole adage about what doesn't get measured doesn't get done is very valid. And I think from the introductions from the participants this morning, their expectations are really about us working together to be able to come up with this set of indicators. I want to also applaud the organizers for having a very coordinated approach. So we do have representatives from across the region, as well as representatives which would include from ministries of the environment, from the central statistical offices, from planning divisions, from disaster management authorities, and so on. And it's very important as small countries and as a region, we coordinate our efforts and really come together to achieve this objective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharifa. Now we want to hear a little bit about GO6 and one of the coordinators for the Latin American and Caribbean region, Keisha Garcia, will speak to us a little bit about the status of GO6.
Thank you very much, and good morning, colleagues. And I want to start by saying that it was a real honor and privilege to have served as co-chair of the GEO Latin American Caribbean Assessment Report. And I thank my colleagues at UN Environment, and I thank the government of Trinidad and Tobago for having that opportunity. Now I'm going to give you a little run through of the presentation I'll be making in a few minutes in the meeting, so that you get a flavor of where this has come from and what GO6 is from. The Global Environment Outlook is actually a process that was catalyzed by the United Nations Environment Program back in 1995, as Francesco started to say, to begin to provide a systematic way of reporting on the state of environment to governments around the world. Since then, 5 global reports have been produced and several other thematic, national and regional reports have been put out. UNEP, or UN Environment rather, is currently in the 6th cycle, so GO6. The regional reports, the 6 UN regions have been completed, and the global assessment is now underway. I want to impress the point that GEO is not meant to undertake new research as a part of the GEO process. GEO uses available research to make the best determination or the best assessment of what is happening within the environment as a means of informing policy and decision makers about some of the options that are available to them in their decision-making processes. And GO6 has come at a very nice time. GO6 came at the end of the Millennium Development Goals, and it also came at the very beginning of the Sustainable Development Goals. So we had the opportunity to take stock of where our region had got to in terms of the MDGs, as we call them, and then we set up the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDG framework, as our way for moving forward. And this is where the indicators that you're hearing about over and over come in, because we do need to agree on and establish indicators against which we can measure progress. Hopefully there will be progress in the coming years. We can measure the progress of the region in working towards the 2030 sustainability agenda. Now, in terms of what the GO6 Latin America and Caribbean report tells us, I dare say that the data has already confirmed much of what we know. Climate change is a problem, biodiversity is declining, the environment is under threat. We know those things. What GO6 has done is to provide some of the data to show the trends, whether things are accelerating, and in many cases they are, and in a few cases where things may be getting better. For example, you may not know that in the Caribbean there has been a net gain in forest cover over the last few years, and this has been as a result of several initiatives and deliberate efforts to reforest parts of the Caribbean. Now, GO6 in Latin America and the Caribbean pointed to a few key things for the governments to take note of. The first is that it's urgent to decouple our economic growth from our resource consumption, and we have to find ways of doing that. And I dare say that I know from some other processes that I'm working on now that some of our countries are in fact moving towards this. We have to look at how we might reduce our dependence on fossil fuels and look at some alternatives that might be available to the region, especially in the context of our growing urban areas. And this is where, as Sharifa has pointed out, greening infrastructure might be really crucial. We also have to look at ecosystem-based adaptation. We saw what happened to our neighboring countries in this last hurricane season, and ecosystems play an important role in helping to mitigate against some of these effects. And it is important that we invest in our ecological infrastructure in order to protect our security and our health. We also need to strengthen our governance. Our governance systems are fractured, they are weak, they are not meeting our needs. And we do need to look at ways that we can actually improve this. Collaboration across the region in this regard is also very important. As a region, we also have to begin to use tools to bridge what we call the science policy interface. This is where we bring research to bear on decision making, and we have to strengthen that. Because even though GEO has been in existence now, as I told you, for over 20 years, we are still not getting to the heart of decision making, especially at the national levels, in the way that we need to. This is where our workshop becomes very important. This is where the partnerships that we build become very important, and we need to focus on that. And those are just a few things that came out of the assessment that I highlight for you. So again, I thank UN Environment, I thank the government of Trinidad and Tobago, I thank Hayden, who was there at the beginning of the GO6 process to egg me on. I thank all of you for the opportunity, and I myself look forward to a very fruitful discussion over the next few days.
Thank you very much, Keisha. I think we understand and we're now seeing very clear evidence that climate change is with us. We've had the destruction of our brothers and sisters in the Northern Caribbean, and therefore we as a Caribbean people need to take an integrated approach towards environmental management. We need to understand that our ecosystems are valued, and we need to value our ecosystems. In Trinidad and Tobago, as we move towards diversification, as we move towards a tourism industry, we need to understand the importance of our natural environment, and we need to make informed decisions, as all the panelists have said. So as we move forward, and hopefully this workshop will be the start of a more positive engagement with respect to the environment. We would establish indicators, and as a Caribbean, we will measure how we are performing with respect to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I thank you.